Bitcoin is on a very high growth trajectory, right? And it's not just a linear growth. It's going to grow a lot, compounded really high, right? So, this is something that's going to go up 10x, 20x from where we are now. And so because it's going to go up 10x, 20x, you're going to get a massive amount of volatility because it's growing at this super linear way, not just even x squared. It's growing at x to the power 6. So, if you see something that's growing at x to the power 6, you absolutely should own that thing.
Yeah.
Right?
So what's...
It's just, you just have to get it in your head. This thing's growing at x to the power 6. Okay, I'm going to own that thing.
Seasoned investor Fred Kreuger recently conveyed a powerful message about Bitcoin, believing it to be the most revolutionary asset in history, poised for substantial growth of 10x to 20x from its current position. In his latest interview, he highlighted Bitcoin's remarkable growth trajectory, emphasizing its exponential rise at a rate of x to the power of 6. Kreuger asserts that owning Bitcoin offers significant advantages, underlining its transformative potential as a superior form of currency. He urges everyone to seize the opportunity to invest in Bitcoin now, emphasizing the importance of early adoption for maximizing profits and securing future financial stability. Let us now view clips of the interviews as Kreuger shares his bullish insights. While watching, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and enable post notifications for more similar content. Stay tuned until the end of the video to hear Kreuger's insights on how even a small Bitcoin investment can lead to life-changing outcomes. We hope you enjoy it.
Bitcoin, at the end of the day, it is growing almost exponentially. It's growing like a weed, okay?
Yeah.
And basically, 25% a year, there's more Bitcoin users every year. And it doesn't matter whether Bitcoin's price is going up or down, the usage is increasing, right? And there's all these ways of measuring that. You can measure people who have 1 Bitcoin, or people who have 1/10 of a Bitcoin, or addresses that have 100th of a Bitcoin, or even addresses that have 10 Bitcoin. And you see these things are growing at sort of a geometric rate, right? And so there's, it really is, there is no uncertainty about it. It's just, this thing's growing. It's sort of like population growth in a country like, India, right? Mm-hmm. Population growth in Netherlands is not growing, but population in India is growing, or Mexico, it's growing every year. It's growing at, 7% a year. Yeah. And, I think we're dealing with sort of an inevitability of the growth and adoption of Bitcoin. That's really the basis. Now, this is also growing in terms of price. It's also growing in a very consistent way, but it's a little harder to really appreciate and understand that because it's happening in this logarithmic kind of way. If we're right, if we Bitcoiners are right, and I think we are, right? But if this is going to become the future world money, right? Mm-hmm. Then if you don't get involved at year 15 of the future of world money, you kind of miss pretty much the biggest thing that's going to change the world economy, going forward. I don't see anything that's going to be bigger than that, right? Because if the entire money supply changes to a world where we're running Bitcoin, and if that happens within the next, say, 20 years, well, the difference between you not getting involved now and getting involved 20 years from now is, it's going to be completely night or day as to kind of whether you retire, for example. You know what I mean? I've thought about it. Now my thesis is that I think there's a couple things that Bitcoin does much better than regular money, right? And the first thing I think it does is it allows your money to be held in custody by yourself and moved wherever you want, right? And, if you have euros and you move to America, your euros are basically useless. We do not accept the euro over here, right?
Yeah.
The dollar, my dollars in Netherlands are pretty useless, But Bitcoin is this unit where I can hold my Bitcoin in a wallet, and I can take that wallet anywhere I want in the world, right? And that's a fundamentally new thing, and I think that's actually the killer app of Bitcoin, right? Is that it's sort of it's money that you can hold, and you can move around the world, right? That's the first thing. I think it's just, and nothing has this, because fiat really has to be stored in a bank account, right?
Yeah.
And then there's some third party that's kind of gating it. Bitcoin can be stored, just in a wallet, right? And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, I can send Bitcoin anywhere to anybody, anywhere in the world, without an intermediary either, right? So I don't need a checkbook to send it. I don't need a wire to send it. I can send it to anybody in the world. And again, that's a really new thing, right? Now, other cryptocurrencies have that capability, as they have the capability of the wallet, right? But I would think those two things are the thing that are the biggest capabilities of crypto in general, right? And then the third thing is, this sort of finite supply, right? So, it cannot be debased. And I think between those things, I think you have something that is extremely powerful. And it's extremely powerful for people to keep their money out of the reach of the government.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the biggest, that's the core driver of Bitcoin's growth. Number one driver is, I want to take my money and I want to move it outside of the banking system. I want to move it outside of the government system.
Before we proceed with more of Kreuger's insights on the transformative potential of Bitcoin, here is another piece of the latest news you might also want to know about. Most of us are aware that the new Bitcoin exchange-traded funds have garnered substantial capital, primarily from retail investors rather than traditional banks and institutional players. Recently, VanEck CEO Jan van Eck noted that while the success of ETFs has exceeded expectations, the majority of inflows are from retail investors, with limited participation from TradFi entities. Despite the absence of official approval from US banks to recommend Bitcoin, Van Eck anticipates potential institutional investments in the coming months. He emphasized that the Bitcoin ETF market is still evolving, with further maturation and technological advancements expected. Regarding investor preference for ETFs over direct BTC ownership, Van Eck cited convenience, safety, and affordability, highlighting reduced spreads and fees compared to centralized exchanges like Coinbase. Let us now return to Fred Kreuger as he shares his latest Bitcoin forecast.
Here's the thing. If you're looking at an asset that is sort of growing at some linear rate, right? And it's oscillating around this linear rate, I would say, yeah, it's way too volatile, right? Like, why would I want an asset if I said, okay, you can either invest in something that's going to go up 10% a year, almost guaranteed, right? Or you can get an asset that's going to grow 40% a year, plus or minus 40%. Now you're like, well, I'll take the 10%. I'll take the 10% for sure, right? Like my house on the canals in Netherlands, right? That thing's probably going to grow up 10% a year, maybe 7%, right? That sounds a lot safer than something that's might go down 40%, right? But that's not the correct way of looking at it. It's not like it's a linear thing that's going to be, it's actually an exponential thing, right? So because it's exponential, not linear, right? It's not just volatility around a linear path. It's volatility around an exponential path. So if somebody said, well, you have this exponential asset which has some volatility around an exponential path, do you want that? You should be like, of course I want that. It's great. Like, this thing's going to be the next Microsoft, right? I'm buying Microsoft in 1986. Great. Like, I don't care what the volatility is if I buy Microsoft at around 86. Microsoft went up, 3,000 times from 1986 till now.
Yeah.
You know, so Bitcoin is on a very high growth trajectory, right? And it's not just a linear growth. It's going to grow a lot, compounded really high, right? So, you know, this is something that's going to go up 10x, 20x from where we are now. And so because it's going to go up 10x, 20x, you're going to get a massive amount of volatility because it's growing at this super linear way, you know, not just even x squared, it's growing at x to the power 6. So, you know, if you see something that's growing at x to the power 6, you absolutely should own that thing. If you ask most people who are not in Bitcoin, or even people who are in Bitcoin, you say, explain the price of Bitcoin. They'd be like, well, there was back in the day, a long, long time ago, Bitcoin was really cheap, right? Like you were saying, right? You know, 2013, it was like a couple $100, right? You can buy Bitcoin for $200, right? And then, so there was this prehistory where it was very cheap. And then in 2017, it kind of went from $1,000 to $20,000, right? Almost 20,000. Then it crashed. And then it was like dead. And then it went in late 2020, it rose again from the dead and it went to $60,000. And then it stayed there for about a year, went down and went back up. It hit 60,000, 69,000 in the second peak. Then it crashed. And then it did nothing for 3 years. It died. And then last year it went back up. Well, that doesn't sound like a straight line at all, right? Like
No.
that's sort of like sounds like a very risky kind of investment that probably too risky for most people, right? Like especially somebody my age, right? They'd be like, yeah, I don't need that. That sounds like way too much volatile, just complete risky casino, you know? But if you look at it on a logarithmic space and you say, great, let's look at the logarithm of Bitcoin price, right? Which the logarithm is a good way that you can put a graph of Bitcoin price over a very wide time scale, right? So from when Bitcoin was at 10 cents, right? So the logarithm is -1 at 10 cents, right? To right now where Bitcoin, let's say it's roughly $100,000, not quite 100,000 yet, but you know, 100,000 would be 10 to the power 6. So the logarithm of it in base 10 is 6. So you went from -1 to +6, right?
Yeah.
So you look at that, and now the trick is look at time also on a logarithmic basis. So look at time starting at the Genesis block and 15 years from there. So 10 years, that's 1, right? Because 10 to the power 1, 10 to the power 1 is 10, right? And so, you know, you start at 0, you go to a little bit beyond 1. Now you're at, you know, 1.4, right? Or 1.3, you know. And so if you look at time that way and logarithm price, now you see, whoa, it's a complete straight line.
Yeah.
It's very clear. Once you see it, you're like, I can't unsee that. It's completely a straight line. And now it wobbles around the straight line, but it's very clear that it's growing linearly. Not possible that it's random, right?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, there's not that many people have seen that graph, including not that many Bitcoiners, right?
Yeah.
And so once you see that graph, you're like, oh, that's odd. Why is this thing that went up from 10 cents to 100,000? So it went up 7 orders of magnitude, right?
Yeah.
How could something that grew up in such a consistent way? And the answer is it's a power law. It's part of these power laws that exist in nature all over the place, right? If you think of this thing as a payment technology, you're missing it, right? You will miss it. You will miss
exactly.
You will miss what it is, right? Because you're like, okay, well, Venmo does really well. You know, Venmo does pretty good. It works. PayPal works. You know, and maybe stable coins are better than using Bitcoin because, stable coins is the dollar. It's, if you're in Venezuela, the dollar seems pretty good. You know what I mean? So I think that the problem is, I think payment tech, you miss it. And I think the hard thing is realizing that it actually is a new form of money. And it's a new unit of account. And that's really the hard part because, I think it's so very counterintuitive that we even, why do we need a new unit of account? It's not clear, like living in America in particular, or Netherlands, right?
Yeah.
Why do I need to start, going from, the euro to this weird unit of account called Bitcoin? Why?
What are your thoughts on Fred Kreuger's bullish outlook on Bitcoin's future growth potential? And how do you see Bitcoin's performance playing out shortly? Share your thoughts in the comments section. If you found today's video informative and would like to receive more insights and updates on cryptocurrency and global finance, please consider liking the video, subscribing to our channel, and enabling post notifications. Be sure to stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll uncover more about the fascinating developments in the crypto space. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep investing wisely. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.